control. Her gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She caught me with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, welcome to this Friday edition of the Paranormal Portal. Special thank you to the Freaky Friday guys. Great show, and thank you for setting the stage for me to follow. It's still an honor, and always will be. Ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't catch it, I know they do a YouTube-only video on Saturdays as well, so you can catch the same crew doing their thing on Saturday on YouTube, on the Kev Baker Show YouTube channel, so definitely check that out. But before I go any further, I just want to say a special thank you to, let me just get to this quick. I want to say a special thank you to Karen Elsner for your fantastic contribution and donation to the show. That is awesome, wonderful. I'm absolutely humbled, and thank you so much. It certainly helps for us to expand the show. And hello to all of you in the TFR live chat, and hello to all of you in the YouTube chat. We got a really special show for you guys tonight. Back by popular demand, of course, we are welcoming back a good friend and an amazing contributor to the Paranormal Portal. Mr. Duke Sullivan of World Bigfoot Radio is joining us again, ladies and gentlemen. So welcome to the show, Duke.
Howdy, rowdies. How's everybody doing out there tonight?
I think everybody's ready to go. I mean, everybody's piling in real quick, and the numbers are looking good. So apparently they're happy you're here. So we got that.
They always find me.
They always find you, and for good cause. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not familiar with Duke or you didn't catch his first appearance on the show, he is, of course, the host and founder of World Bigfoot Radio on YouTube, and it's a phenomenal show full of just gobs and gobs of information, and the subject matter is not just Bigfoot. He really tackles the entire cryptid universe, and it's just an amazing show. Full of, I've been researching this stuff for years, but every episode you always blow me away with things that I've never heard of or facts that I'd never come across in all my research. How do you do it?
That's my job. I've been at it for over 4 decades, and part of the thrust of my show is to try and be sort of on the edge of what's going on, what people know at this point. And I think I sort of gear my show not only just to the casual listener, but also to people like yourself that have been into this for years and years and years. So I try and make sure that every show I put out something that probably the majority haven't even heard before, or maybe haven't thought about at least. And, and that way it stimulates people to think and discussion, and then people get, interesting ideas based on stuff that we talk about, and they go out and actually research it, which is, of course, always handy. And I think that it makes the shows more interesting, too, because it's not going to be the same old, tired, regurgitated thing over and over and over again. If we're talking about Bigfoot, there's going to be something about Bigfoot that we're talking about, and I'll have on a guest that has more knowledge in that area than I do, and, pump them for information, basically. So, that's sort of what I do with all the cryptids and stuff. The last one I had on, you've had on your show, Robin Moonshadow. She's incredibly knowledgeable about the proto-pygmies, the little people all around the world, So when I want to do a show on little people, get her or somebody else that's in her league of knowledgeability on the subject and get them on. That's basically what I try and do.
Yeah, her research has really taken on some exciting turns. I know she's really clocking in a lot of miles, and she's getting out there, and she's found some amazing footprints and stuff like that. It's she is definitely so dedicated to her craft. It's really phenomenal.
Yeah, the other thing I love is that she's not just an archivist; she does that part of it too. But she actually gets out in the field, and captures interesting things on video and finds little person tracks. And she's out with some Sasquatch group down here in the lower 48. I think it was last weekend, or maybe still this week and this weekend, and put up several videos of it. Mm-hmm. So it isn't like she's just sitting there looking at books all the time. She's getting out there and running around in the field trying to get direct encounters and information and evidence on this sort of thing.
Right. And one other thing that I really enjoy about your episodes, and I just want to throw this out there as well, because I think, you do a phenomenal job not only of discussion and this new information, but you always have images on there that are relevant to the discussion. And I just sit there absolutely mesmerized, not only with the conversation, but having those visual representations on the screen of what you're talking about. You must have a hell of a photo archive to work with. That's just incredible.
Oh, yeah, it's gigantic. It's a great thing JPEGs don't take up too much space, or I wouldn't be able to do that. And I still have to go surfing for images, most of the time when I do a show. Occasionally I get a guest that sends me like, hey, I got 150 pictures. I'm like, okay, we're good for an hour. Let's go, and most of them can't do that. So, I have to fill in stuff, and I just think it adds to the whole thing a whole lot when you're telling a story. I had a Bigfoot encounter, blah, 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 blah. Do you have actual pictures from there? Well, let's use those. If not, I'll go, image search, and I'll find pictures from near there, or I'll find a picture that looks like the area you're describing and put it up. And, with a lot of the Bigfoot artwork and stuff that I have, access and permission to use, combined with that sort of thing, if you want to take the time to put it together, you can really make the whole thing a lot more interesting. And it helps a lot when people are talking about a subject, you actually have visual reference there that people can look at and go, okay, this is what they're talking about. Or, blah, 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 17-inch track. Boom, there's the picture. That's what he's talking about. There's the picture right there. You know? And people can get confused too, because I don't always label everything in my show to the nth degree.
Sure.
And I'll run a piece of interesting video, and in the last show I ran one, and if you guys are wondering what the thing with the gnomes jumping out of the trunk of the car is, it's called Elm Attack. You can go find that on YouTube. Just look up Elm Attack. You'll see it. I about 99% convinced that it was just somebody with a budget made a really interesting video, and it's not real. But it is hilarious, so I figured since we were laughing during that part, I'd put in something gnome-related that you guys that were watching the screen part of it could have fun taking a look at.
Yeah, I saw that video when it came out years ago, and I about died. I was like, oh my God, that's so amazing. That's awesome. Somebody's got a lot of time in their hands, but they did a good job putting that together.
Definitely.
The other image that I was really floored by, and it was when you guys were discussing giants. And I do want to have you back and do a show on giants if you'd be so inclined. I would love for that to happen, because it's a subject matter that's there's such sparse information out there. There's a lot of information, but for someone like me to find it, it's just, there's so much chaff to go through. And I know in listening to you, you're well dialed in on this, but there was a representation when people were talking about how big are they, and you put an image in your feed of a gorilla, a human next to it, and then quite a bit taller, the Bigfoot, and then of course the giant behind that, which was just amazing, just to get an idea of the scale that we're talking about here when you're discussing giants. It was just like, oh my God, they're like house sized.
Yeah, visual representation helps, and it's hard enough for most people to even believe that there could be Bigfoot. There's this 8 to 10 foot tall, hairy, goofy looking ape person running around the woods, and how can that even be real? And then when you get enough time, and then you see them, and you find their tracks and all this, it's like, okay, they're real. Well, what else is real? And you dig deeper and you start finding these other reports, and then you start finding, I had a member on my team find a mountain giant track last August, about 2 miles from Coloma. He didn't have his tape measure with, put his foot down next to it, took a couple pictures. We're guessing 22, 23 inches, 4 toes. And we're like, yeah, it's not a Bigfoot. You know, so, and we know these things are around. There's certain mountain ranges around here. We're pretty sure there's some of them there. And there's been all kinds of weird, reports. And people find oddball tracks and things that shouldn't happen. And I'll give you an example of that. Just got a report 2 days ago from somebody that I used to be a roommate with, actually. And he has relatives that are in forestry. And so he's really dialed into the whole nature thing around here. Where's the good places to go hunting and this and that and the other thing. And he's into, prospecting. So he goes and he actually literally pans gold in the rivers, and he's got a metal detector he can go around with and look for, gold and silver and all that kind of good stuff. So he goes up to this one creek that, after he told me this story, I let him know that I had already heard 4 Bigfoot encounters from this area. He didn't know it, but he goes up to the top of this big long road, maybe 6-7 miles long, and you get up to the very end of it, and you're up near where the creek is just starting to come down the mountain, and apparently that's a pretty good place. He's got some little nuggets there before, so he's up there with his gold pan, and he's panning away, and it's a nice sunny day. This is then, mid-fall. It's not cold. It's not raining. It's not overcast. Everything's nice. He's right next to this little river, so he can't hear much of anything sound-wise, though.
Sure.
But he's there the better part of the day, and nobody shows up, and no cars. He's at the dead end now. Nobody comes driving up there and turns around to go back down, which they would, of necessity, have to, because it's not a very wide dirt road. And you really don't have room to turn around in it very well unless there's a wide spot on it. So nobody comes up there. He gets in his car. He's getting ready to leave. It's about an hour to dark. He goes 2-3 miles down the road, and there's a vehicle in the way, and it's blocking the way across the road. Now, the interesting thing about this is, first of all, the people that own the vehicle are there and frantic. It's an older couple from Washington State. And they can't get cell phone signal, and they're trying to figure out how to get their vehicle moving again and not blocking the road. The reason this is an issue is because this vehicle is on its roof. And this is a huge double tandem rear axle truck, 8-wheel, with a camper on top of it that's on its roof.
Oh, my God.
And he says, what happened? And they said, we parked along the side there's a little wide spot here, and we parked so that, if anybody else wanted to come past, they could get past us, and went for a walk in the woods, and we heard this crash and came back, and our vehicle's upside down blocking the road. Now, there's literally not enough room to flip this thing over onto its side and then turn it again onto its roof. It would have been on the embankment on the other side. Chris, my friend, who's very curious about this sort of thing, takes a look around, and he notices, first of all, like I said earlier, dry, sunny conditions. He's wondering if they skidded or something. There's no evidence on the road that they skidded. There's no place they could have actually tried to swing this thing around where they were at and had any chance of being able to actually back up, go forward enough times to turn this thing around. Even if they tried to pull up on the embankment, on the steep side of the hill, they wouldn't have had enough room to do it, and there were no marks on there that any tires had gone up there. So something had come along and literally flipped this vehicle over and left it blocking the road.
Oh, my God.
Also, having been on Bigfoot research expeditions with me and having enough, he's not like a believer, but not very skeptical either at this point. He was looking around for tracks, and he didn't find any tracks, but this is, late summer, Montana. It hasn't rained in 4 months. Everything's baked like concrete. Sure. So I'm not surprised. But he said, in the same token, he didn't see any marks that the vehicle had tried to go up the embankment or that they had skidded and flipped it somehow. He just couldn't even figure out how it could happen. But he managed to squeeze his vehicle around the side of the embankment, past theirs, and took the lady into town where she could get cell phone signal and get a wrecker out there to try and help them.
Oh, my God.
And, of course, that was pretty much the last he knew of it. So you get these weird reports occasionally that are like, well, You're talking about like 3.5 tons weight probably on this thing. What could like flip it over?
Right. Oh my God, that's just it didn't show any distress on the sides like it had rolled. So it was
No, and that's the other thing too, is like you would have had to have a team of guys in a block and tackle. I mean, you could rock it enough to tip it over on its side. Then it's blocking the road.
right.
Okay.
Hmm.
But from there, if you try and roll it upward, you're rolling it up the embankment, up the hillside.
My God, wow, that is so creepy.
Yeah, no kidding. I immediately gave him a hard time for not taking pictures. And he's like, well, I didn't think of it. I was trying to help.
Oh my God, yeah, that's amazing. So in that situation, would you think that a Bigfoot would have the strength to do that?
Uh, God, I don't know. I mean, we get big Bigfoot up here, and, they're tremendously powerful, even if you upscale from what a gorilla can do.
Right.
It would be tremendous power. But some of this stuff is like so far out of, I mean, yeah, Bigfoot could turn it over. A really big alpha could turn it over, and he could turn it over again.
Hmm.
Could he pick it up and turn it over? I
Right.
don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, because the framework on a camper would collapse by the weight of the truck.
Exactly. Yeah, the
Yeah.
side of it would be completely mushed and collapsed before you even got it to roll over onto the top.
Wow. Oh my God. That is so disturbing. And to think that
Uh,
these things are out there.
and this is in the Sapphire Mountains, where we have gone on expeditions where we do believe we found evidence of there being mountain giants around. When you
Wow.
get an X structure that's made out of 2 lodgepole pines, each of which is about 60 feet long, and get easy guesstimated weight from all the local loggers at about 3 tons apiece, moved into position, they're not pushed over, something moved them there.
Hmm.
They're entire trees.
Oh man.
So whatever can pick up and move 3 tons is the likely candidate for who flipped the camper, and that's in the same mountain range, not that far away.
That's incredible. Wow. And that's where this stuff just gets so amazing because, I mean, we all, as human beings, we think we've got this all dialed in. I mean, we're apex predators. We've kind of shaped the world in our image and we got it all tamed and patted down just the way we like it. We get license fees for using it and that's it. And then we go home to our manicured lawns. But the idea that there's this whole catalog of other things out there that move in, stealthily and have chosen our absence and avoid us at all costs, it's like, it takes on this eerie feeling all of a sudden. These woods, that and you felt comfortable in are suddenly foreign and terrifying and you just don't know what's around the corner.
Even when you think you do. I mean, a lot of people would say that, like, oh, Duke, he's totally open-minded and blah, blah, blah. No, I'm a skeptard. I'm an idiotic skeptard.
Okay.
I had like people telling me over and over and over again, little people are real. They're in these same areas. Be careful, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. Little people, ha, ha, ha. Then you find a track line and you go, oh, God, it is real. Oh, my God. Okay, I need to start paying more attention. And even when you get like good information from a lot of accounts and stuff that, hey, there's these other things bigger than Bigfoot, there's these mountain giant things,
Right.
mountain trolls, whatever they are, that are running around out here. Until you actually find evidence yourself, it's still one of those, it could be real, could be not, who knows,
Yeah.
Then you find evidence yourself out in the field. And it's, again, this other layer of, well, it isn't bad enough to have Bigfoot out here. What the hell else is out here running around,
Yeah, exactly. But when you look at the scale of the terrain in these north, the Pacific Northwest and several areas across the country, the Midwest, there's these large ranges of forest in Colorado, over into the Appalachian Trail and such. It doesn't take long once you're out there and you start looking around to realize that it really wouldn't be hard to stay hidden if you didn't want to be found.
No, especially out here in the Pac West, because unlike the East Coast where it's mostly deciduous forest that's already been cut down at some point and hasn't grown back to giant size yet, this is big forest out here.
Yeah.
You've got trees with, the trunks take 3 full-size guys with hands linked to go around the base of them. They go way, way up there. Something Bigfoot size doesn't need to turn sideways to hide behind it.
Right.
Hint, hint,
Now, what was I gonna say? There's something else tied into that. With in regards to Bigfoot, we have obviously there's these major schools of thought, and we've discussed the Bigfoot community and how at odds it is. But there's there's the thought that it's this this undiscovered primate. There's the thought that it's this hominid, this relic hominid, and there's the thought that it's something from outer space, and there's the thought that it's a spiritual thing. To take a play out of the Wes Germer playbook, what do you kind of think these are?
Oh, that's the $64,000 question, right?
Okay.
So, what do I think they are? Let me go back and say, here's how I usually define it. Here's what they're not. They're not a big dumb ape running around the woods.
Okay.
Beyond that, I can't say for certain. That's the only one that I can discount. Do I think that they're supernatural? That would be the next one on my list that's hanging by a thread. Right. They may have paranormal powers, but so do some humans. So that doesn't make them supernatural.
Sure. Okay.
Do I think they're Nephilim? Possibly. Do I think they're pre-Adamite? Possibly. Do I think there's something genetically engineered? Not recently and not by us. We've got accounts of these things for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So back when we didn't have the tech to do this, they were around. Somebody did it, unless it was some civilization that we had that reached that level before and then got completely annihilated and they were just leftovers from it. If they were genetically engineered, probably somebody else did it.
Yeah, and that is the curiosity, and I know that the other part of it is that there's also the people that think that they're the gentle giants, and I guess by most accounts they avoid people. They don't go out of their way to have confrontations with people. But I think that some people lose the sight of the fact that these beings do have a dark side. They do have a very aggressive side, and if they're pushed or tormented, or if they're feeling threatened, they have a whole different side to them that's just not even kind.
Yeah, I think to be on the safe side, what I try to always picture in my mind is that they're intelligent like a human and they have no moral code like an animal.
Okay.
In other words, they're neutral.
Right.
What are they going to do? Well, they're going to think pretty much like us, but they're going to act pretty much like an animal would because they have no moral compass. They have no societal norms ingrained in them. They have no ways that they were taught from childhood for a zillion different ways that this is right, this is wrong. Don't do this, you'll go to jail. It's great, do this. Blah, 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 blah. They have very, very simple things that they've likely learned as members of their troop, like stay away from humans, they shoot at you. Things like that. Other than that, everything is going to be based around how they interact with other members of their troop, what the dominant pecking order structure is, exactly like a guerrilla troop. So, yeah, they have language and stuff, but, how many words do you need to describe the things that are in the woods and your daily activities and whatnot? So, I mean, it's best to think of them as what they likely are in some form or fashion, as very primitive humanoid beings, probably not humans, or maybe partially inbred with us, but similar to us in a lot of ways, but not in the way they don't think about things the way that we do. And to expect them to think about things the way that we do is really anthropomorphizing and incredibly dangerous and could get you killed. Like you just made a blanket statement like Bigfoot are basically not that dangerous. I agree with you. The vast majority of reports, they want to leave. If you're getting too close to them, they'll back up. They try and warn you to make you go away. They'll bluff charge. They throw pine cones at you. They make a racket, whatever it takes to, make human go away without actually hurting you. When it gets to the point where they actually hurt you, they're really, really serious and you need to pay attention. Yeah. But, for the most part, I think unless you run into some like rogue male that's living out in the woods by himself or something and doesn't even have a troop around him and threw the rule book out the window, you probably don't have to worry about them attacking you, unless it's like same sort of behaviors like for a grizzly bear or a troop of gorillas. Get too close to the babies or the females, they're not going to like it.
Yeah, very good points. And I think that that's good to remember because of course there are those that I don't know if you're familiar with her, and I'm certainly not trying to disparage anybody, but a lady by the name of Barb and her dog Gabby have basically been habituating for a long time, and I know she walks a ways away from her house to do it, and I guess that's respectable, but I just think of the dark side of when habituation goes sideways and some of the horror stories that I've heard. And after the break, if you have any tales like this that you can recount regarding the dark side of the Sasquatch, if you don't mind. I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. We hadn't discussed this prior to this, but
No, I'm the guy that identified the two carnivorous subvarieties. No, I don't want to talk about dangerous Bigfoot.
well, I just think it's good to just so people don't think they're the I don't know, Chewbacca's out in the forest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, no, I totally agree. And let me add the quick disclaimer on before we go to break here. What I'm talking about is that there's more than one type of Bigfoot, and we're just referencing type 1 Bigfoot.
Right.
The ones that look like humans and you see the most commonly. There are other subvarieties that are less common. Some of them are incredibly dangerous. Mm-hmm. They do not act like regular Bigfoot. Don't expect them to.
Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to our break in just a couple seconds here, but of course, we're joined tonight by Duke Sullivan of World Bigfoot Radio, who is joining us to talk about all things cryptid. And as you can tell, we brought the right man to the show to do it. So he's like a walking encyclopedia. It's just amazing to listen. I'm trying to be on top of the show because last time Duke was on, I just ended up getting mesmerized into the narrative and kind of forgot that I was hosting a show. So I'm trying to stay on it tonight, but we're going to go to our first break, so don't go away. We'll be right back with more of the Paranormal Portal.
Real people, real radio.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Friday edition of the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and whether you're listening to us on TFR Live, iHeart, TuneIn, or TalkStream Live, or you're tuning into the live stream on YouTube, youtube.com/Paranormal Portal, we are absolutely thrilled you're here with us. Tonight we are joined by the Duke Sullivan of World Bigfoot Radio is with us, and he is really directing the ship tonight, and it's just a real pleasure to have you with me, Duke. I'm just honored that you came back, and I hope to keep bringing you back.
Hey, no problem, buddy. It's really fun to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you, and it's, every episode's an eye-opener, and before the break, we were talking about the dark side of Bigfoot, and you had mentioned the two sub-varieties of Bigfoot that are not your Harry and the Henderson type. And with that, I'll let you take the floor.
Well, yeah, we, like I've mentioned lots of times before, there's several researchers out there that are convinced there's more than one kind. Mm-hmm. Some of them because they've seen more than one kind, like myself. Wow. And everybody's classification is a little bit different. Mine tends to be pretty close to what the Bigfoot outlaws use, or like Wes Germer would use. Mm-hmm. And type 1 is your typical Patty type Sasquatch or Gleg or something, along those lines, where mm-hmm. they look more or less human. They got a human type nose, and the bigger males and stuff will have the conical head, sagittal crest, like a big gorilla will have. The southern wood booger type tend to be a little bit shaggier. They got a rounder face, look more chimpanzee-like according to descriptions, mm-hmm. and usually don't have the conical head. Generally, even though they get huge, because Bigfoot get huge, generally they're not as gigantic as the ones up in the Pac West and up into Alaska and in the mountains and stuff up here, just, because not as much food, not as much room, basically, would be what I would attribute that to. Mm-hmm. But the other two, the 3s and the 4s, there's a lot of debate going on about what's a type 3. Like some of the dogmen people like to class a type 3 as a dogman, which, clearly isn't. And then the type 4 is the subarctic horror type that I unfortunately got to see in my first encounter, and that's would be called the Wendigo, essentially, by the Upper East Coast natives. Mm. And for them, some of them had different words for different things. A lot of these tribes, which is one of the things that caught my notice initially, when you really get into the etymology and you start looking at the different names that the different tribes had for their local boogeyman, it doesn't take too long to figure out which one is Bigfoot. But then some of them, you're left with these other names. Right. And the description isn't Bigfoot. And you start going, what is this thing? And then you start realizing the names from neighboring tribes for some other boogeyman aren't the same, but the descriptions match. Mm-hmm. And the behavior described matches. And then you start looking at that and going, well, all over this area over here, all these tribes got the name for a Bigfoot, but they got a name for this other thing mm-hmm. that they're all describing. And then you start looking at local sighting reports and, well, surprise, surprise, people are still seeing these weird things that aren't Bigfoot in these same areas. I just got contacted not very long ago by a Bigfoot researcher up in Alberta, Canada, who has for years been collecting reports from around the area and had found this one area where he kept getting these weird reports, and he couldn't figure out if it was hoaxers, if the misidentification, or what was going on, but it didn't conform to Bigfoot, and the descriptions all match.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then he found my channel and he did some research on gugwees and went, "Oh, geez, that's what's going on up here."
Wow.
So that's the type 3 that gets misidentified as a dogman. Is essentially the only thing it's got in common with the dogman is it's got like a pug snout on it,
Okay.
like a bulldog type nose or something like that, and they got some really big fangs on them, apparently, according to witness sightings, and they get in the range of around 10 foot. Haven't heard of any bigger than that, but that's still plenty big enough.
Yeah.
Apparently, they do work together in groups from the little that we've been able to gather on them, and so some of the background on them says that they tend more toward being scavengers. So one of the things to watch for in your local area is if you have roadkill. Watch the roadkill going down the road and it's summer and there's somebody hit a deer and it stinks, right? And it's laying on the side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And if it disappears, especially if it's like disappearing on the weekend when you know it isn't the road crew showing up and getting it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, because they will eat stinky, dead, rotting corpses of anything. They're, garbage dumpsters, which is another way that you can, it's hard to tell by smell. But we've got enough reports now that seem to indicate that they tend to smell like rotting meat a lot more than Bigfoot do.
Oh.
Bigfoot have the lathered horse, musky dog, little dingleberries pressed into their hair sort of smell, even like rotting sewage or something like that. But you usually don't hear the, meat locker filled with meat unplugged for 2 weeks sort of smell wafting from them. And you do hear that on encounters with the Type 3 gugwee. Where the name for gugwee came from is from the Micmac Indian Confederation on the Upper East Coast, who back in the late 1890s were already talking to the white man about this weird thing that was in their area. And, whatever. And then they had seen, gorillas by then were well known, and they had seen pictures and books of gorillas, and they went, well, it kind of looks like this thing. Then apparently when they started seeing pictures of baboons, they went, no, it looks more like this. It's got a snout like this on it.
Oh. Now, is that
So
the Beast of Seven Shoots? Would that be the...
Yes, the Beast of Seven Shoots, assuming that photograph is actually a real critter.
Yeah.
Would have been a smaller gugwee, probably a scout out grabbing a quick bag lunch for the troop or something. Backstory on that one is I know somebody that actually investigated up in that area and was involved in doing the investigation on it. And they actually talked to the couple that had lost the poodle that it's carrying. And that's not a little toy poodle, it's full-size poodle. So think mid-sized dog. And if you look at the picture, you can see its back legs and tail sticking out from underneath his arm. The couple said that this thing had literally walked into their camp, picked up their barking dog, squashed it, put it under its arm, and walked off with it.
Oh, my God. That is horrifying.
And this other guy that took the picture, that was a random picture. He was just walking around snapping shots of the park. I think he took like 110 pictures that day. Uh-huh. And then he got that one picture back and saw this thing and went, what the bleep is that?
Right.
And the picture got back to the researcher that had actually investigated this missing dog in this sighting with this couple and went, holy bleep, I think that's what took the dog. Because look, there's the dog.
Oh, man. And I'm putting it up on the screen for those of you on YouTube. There's several different variations, but again, these are the different types somebody's saying they're the 4 types, but I don't think they got them quite correctly identified. But in the third picture, of course, is that Beast of Seven Shoots carrying, and it does look like the rump end of a poodle. Yeah. Yep. Ugh.
Yep. Yeah, we know what it is because I know the person that interviewed the couple that had to pick it up and walk off with it. So, yeah, that's what it is, full-size poodle.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, the fourth image that you're showing there is somebody else's classification system, and a lot of them use this one where they think it's more of a caveman-looking Bigfoot, and all the sightings, for the most part of that, seem to come from the Upper East Coast.
Okay.
And the reason they think it's more caveman looking is because it doesn't have as much hair on its face. But if you look at some of the photos and the artwork that has been done on, like, the face of Patty, for instance, if you take the hair off her face, she looks like a caveman too.
Oh, okay.
So my opinion is what a lot of these guys are classifying as a type 4 isn't a type 4. It's just a type 1 from the upper East Coast. They have less hair on their face for whatever reason.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, that's really, really interesting and really, really creepy. So these Gugwe or Gugwe, however it's pronounced, are generally much more aggressive. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, Gugwies seem to be, well, they're subarctic also, it seems, for the most part, although there's reports of them in the lower 48. You get most of the reports from up in Canada, where the local law enforcement even call them the bear man. That's their that's their
Oh,
code for it. It's not a Sasquatch, it's that other thing. It's a bear man.
okay.
Uh, and yeah, they seem to be, as you would expect for an animal trying to make a living in a climate like that, they eat a lot more meat,
Right.
and they're a lot less picky about it. And then if you go about to the type 4s, which is the the subarctic Wendigo horror, they seem to be solitary and they seem to be exclusively carnivorous. You never see them in the lower 48, except, interestingly enough, the reports come up during extreme cold snaps and really bad weather, when there's been a big Arctic front sagging down from the Arctic for a couple weeks. Then you start getting reports up and around the border states. Like, these things won't even come south unless it's like 20 below. So they like the weather.
Oh, wow. Eesh. Just think. Now, this couple lost their dog, and that seems to come up an awful lot. Is that dogs are a preferred snack for a lot of these things?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of background between Bigfoot and dogs, because some people have, like, down the south they call them booger and dogs, and they got
Oh,
Sasquatch and Bigfoot and dogs and stuff. And some people just have dogs that they take with them when they're out Bigfoot, Barb and Gabby.
hmm
And dogs can get used to the smell of these things and can get to the point where, since they've had them around enough and they haven't been attacked by them, they sort of, the dog is smart enough to go, okay, I've smelled this particular, whatever that thing is before, it didn't attack me. I'm not that worried. I think where the whole hostility and animosity with dogs thing comes in, it goes back a long, long ways. And first of all, they're just like bears in the sense that they don't like noisy damn animals. If you're going to be barking at them and making a racket, they're not going to like it. That's why bears don't like dogs. They're not afraid of dogs. Dogs can't hurt them. They don't like the noise.
Sure.
Same thing with Bigfoot. And Bigfoot has an ulterior motive, because they're, very, they have a certain amount of audacity and brazenness that they probably shouldn't have. And I'm not sure it's because they think that they're being sneaky and trying to count coup, just pushing themselves too far, or what. But they will take, sort of unnecessary risks. And I think this used to come up a lot in the past, where there'd be humans camping in some area where they didn't usually see them. The Bigfoot would go up and check out the encampment. The dogs would bark at them and give away their presence.
Oh, okay.
So then when Fido comes running out in the woods, Fido's dead, and they'll eat him.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you get things like Caveman that's got them around his mesa over there in New Mexico pretty regularly. They come and mess with the horses. They eat the grain. They, take water out of the water trough, whatever they feel like doing. And they will unchain his dogs and let them loose. And the reason they don't hurt his dogs or do anything to him is because his dogs don't bark at him.
Right.
And it's probably because they let the dogs off the chain. So they're like, oh, here comes my big stinky friend that's going to let me off the chain. Cool. Now I can run around half the night and get into trouble before a caveman wakes up and wonders why I'm off the chain.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Oh man.
So
No.
yeah, it does really seem like it. It's very situational. If the dogs are acting aggressive and making a lot of noise, the Bigfoot tend to not like that. And, again, if the dog is really calm and is like wagging its tail and not barking at them, it probably could walk up and they might even consider petting it. Who knows?
Right. Yeah.
So, having had enough experience talking to other field researchers that have dogs and stuff out in the field, that, as far as I can figure out, that seems to be the role. It seems to be just the aggression and noise of the dog. Although, getting back to type 3 Gugwe again, they do seem to like eating dogs.
Okay.
And that's another thing to look for in areas that they might be around. All the dogs start disappearing. That's a bad sign.
So now that reminds me of the Momo encounter in Missouri. Then is that there were a lot of people missing their dogs, and there were people that allegedly witnessed this thing walking, carrying a dog at one point. Do you suppose that could have been a Gugway then?
I don't know. I don't know if the witness got a chance to look at the face, if they got a good description of what the animal carrying the dog away looked like, or if they're just seeing it from the back, big hairy thing carrying dog away. It must be Momo.
Well,
Could have been a Gugly.
yeah, one of the witnesses was a teenage girl that was babysitting her younger brothers, and she was doing dishes and saw, the kids came in screaming, and she looked out the window and saw this big hairy being out there. Now the thing with Momo is I think it only had 3 toes, but it was described as just this big shaggy mass. Like, it didn't seem to have any discernible features. It was just like this large cousin it from the Addams family, from what I derived from the story that I heard about it. And so I don't know. It was witnessed though.
Yeah, you do tend to hear that a lot more for the type 2s down there in the south, where it seems like for whatever reason they're shaggier, and
Oh, okay.
probably because they can just squat down and they can look like a bush because
Right.
no neck, not much of a pointed head. Squat down, stick your head down a little bit, you're a bush.
Yeah,
Just
it's
don't move.
a natural ghillie suit for sure. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's, you hear that description a lot. The other thing is that I have heard reports, and especially from the natives who pay a lot more attention to this and have hundreds of years of background on it, that they will like do the same thing a sniper with a ghillie suit will, like roll around in the leaves and stuff to get them to adhere to the ghillie suit, or like tie in little pieces of twigs and branches and stuff like that onto the ghillie suit. They will actually do that too, to make themselves even more camo, as if they need to.
Well, the thing that I think surprises me the most about these beings is, okay, they're like 8 to 10 feet tall. They're 1,000 pounds or north of that, but they're allegedly able to traverse impossible terrain, go through thickets and lots of places without a sound. And to me, that is just like, how in the hell do they pull that off?
Lots of practice.
Yeah, well, I suppose.
If you were practicing from the time you were a toddler until you're as old as you are now to walk silently every time you walked, how good would you be at it?
Yeah, I imagine that's true, and they probably know how to utilize the terrain. That being their living room and their home, they know ways to traverse it. I suppose that wouldn't occur to us, but
No, and the other thing is we don't usually think about look up. And
right.
especially here in the Pac West, that's an important thing to remember, because the trees are big enough to support the weight of even really big adults in a lot of cases. And they can easily pull themselves up into a tree and just go from branch to branch for a few trees, not even be on the ground.
Oh,
And they can
good
do that
point.
really quietly. And if they're on the ground, what's the substrate like? In a lot of places out here in the Pac West, it's all like moss.
Yeah.
Or it's like, 12 inches of pine needles. How much noise are you going to get out of that?
Right.
They're not stupid. You don't step on the bare rock over there with the little pebbles on it that are going to slide and scuff and make noise.
Yeah.
You don't walk across the rock field where the rocks are going to clatter and clack and move.
That's a great point, and I guess that makes a lot of sense. Now, I'm from Minnesota, as I know you are as well, and of course the woods over there, you make a lot of noise because of all the dry leaves and stuff that you have to walk through, and branches and stuff. But agreed, up here, the pine needles make like a carpet. It's just this this real soft ground with this needle carpeting on it, and it really isn't very noisy. That's true. No.
And it makes them hell to track too, because they don't leave footprints. They just leave this like vaguely foot-shaped crater in the substrate.
Right. Yeah.
That you have to look for. And I mean, like literally, you've got to get down almost at ground level and eyesight across it sometime to see where the craters are, so you can pick up the trackway again.
Now, the other thing that I found really interesting after moving to this area and being out in the forests up here was, people I think that don't live in these regions, they don't understand how dense forest really is. I mean, a lot of people I don't think have seen like truly rugged forest, but what really surprised me is how dark the forests are up here, and how you can't see 5 feet from you. If you're walking by one of those big conifers, that's got the draping branches down to the ground, you have no idea what's on the other side of that branch. You cannot, your vision won't pierce through it. It's like a wall.
No, and right beyond the trunk of that tree, there's more trunks of other trees that are equal size, blocking out your view of anything beyond it. And then there's underbrush that are growing up, taking advantage of what little light is penetrating the canopy and getting down to the floor of the forest. I mean, this is like some of these tropical forests you see that are like 3-tier, where you've got upper canopy, middle canopy, lower canopy. It's almost like that. I experienced that up in the Yak, which is a lot more like the further west you go, the more rainforesty it gets. And I'm sort of on the edge of where it's big timber, but it's still dry. And if you go up north of here, up into the Yak, I was really impressed the day I was up there. We were in some original forest that hadn't been logged. And we got out of the car, it was raining. And immediately we're getting wet. And we walked off the road underneath the canopy of the forest, and there was no rain. I mean, literally, not a drop was falling on the ground.
Yeah. And that's a pierced. I mean, nothing could pierce that. Even light doesn't really get through. It's just these deep shadows.
No, it's just this really gloomy, weird, looks like Fanghorn Forest in Middle Earth sort of thing, with moss and Spanish moss and big ferns. And, you expect a T-Rex to pop around from behind the tree and chomp you. It takes 3 steps to walk past the trunk of the tree that you're standing next to, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And so I think people think, oh, there's the, I mean, why can't people see them? People are out in the forest all the time. Well, you can't see anything 5 feet from you in these forests up here. They're just really dark and it's almost really foreboding. It was, for me, it took a while to get used to. It was really unnerving, like, being used to the Midwest forest where, if you're under the canopy, there's, a lot of trunks and some growth here and there, but it's pretty much, just a bunch of tree trunks with open space. But up here, that's just not the case.
I agree with you, and that's one thing that I had advantage with because I grew up in the northern part of Minnesota where there's some of the big, really nasty swamps and bogs that you can hunt during the winter because during the summer you'll sink through them, but during the winter there's snow and ice on the surface and you got snowshoes on, so you can walk across it. And you get into some of those places and it can be noon and bright day and it's still dark. You can barely see in there because it's so thick. And this isn't like really tall forest. It's just incredibly thick forest. Yeah. And in a lot of places, this forest it's not even sitting on the ground. It's on a floating muskeg that grew over, hundreds or thousands of years across the surface of a lake. Vegetation started growing on it, then bigger vegetation, then saplings, then finally trees. But you're still on a lake. Wow. And you can still go through in the cracks between the trees that you don't realize. You don't even know you're on a lake until you go through the ground and you disappear.
Oh my God.
That's almost happened to me twice. So super dangerous. That's why most people don't go into those areas. Prime location for the Wendigo types to go hang out during the summer. Nice and cold, dark. Deer like to go there. Poor deer.
Yeah, it's like the deer motel. They check in, but they don't check out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they found one of those traps up in northern Minnesota where there was a little narrow canyon next to this great big giant tag elder swamp. They found it by snowmobile in the winter, and there were deer trails going in, but they weren't coming out. And these guys followed it in and went to the end of a dead end in this canyon, and one of them mountaineered up to the top of it. I guess it was about 40 feet, almost cliff-like, and up at the top, there was a whole pile of frozen deer carcasses.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Guess what they were doing?
Yeah.
They had little traps set there, and that's why they don't have to go very far in the winter. Set up a little trap station like that. You can kill a few of them, throw them in a pile, come back every time you run out and need more food. You only have to hunt, 2-3 times during the winter. Minnesota is an ice box. Nothing's going to thaw and rot. Not until May.
That's true, yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Huh.
Yeah, these are the same guys that found the longest, I'm pretty sure it's the same guys or else it was people that they knew that found the longest Bigfoot trackway ever discovered, which is right up by the Canadian border. It was over 3 miles long. Fully documented on YouTube, easy to find. Go check it out.
Right, yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're at all skeptical about this, you got to think some of the places these tracks are found is not next to campsites. I mean, they're out in the densest, farthest reaches of the forest, and then you see these big, barefoot, oversized prints that are just in the middle of nowhere. And if somebody's going to hoax that, why would they waste the time to go out in these really remote places where probably nobody's been for a decade and lay down tracks? I mean, it just doesn't stand to reason.
Excellent point, Brent, and really applies to what we were just referencing, because in this case, nobody had been there.
Wow.
These guys were making a new snowmobile trail. They had chainsaws with them. They had cut through over a dozen deadfalls to lay the trail as far as they had gone when they encountered the mystery trackway going across where they were going to set the trail. And this was in like snow up to your crotch deep.
Wow.
And they still followed this thing as long as they had light to document and film it.
That's amazing. I'd be just so hesitant though, because what if you find what's making the tracks?
Yeah, exactly. Well, luckily for them, they backtrailed it first to try and figure out where it came from, and that really confused them until they did further research on it and went, oh, it followed all these logs down the hill, because it looked like the tracks came off this log and then just started going through the snow, and he couldn't find any tracks around it. And then after he went back and looked at it again, he realized that there was a whole bunch of these logs that were laying on this hillside, and they were all connected. So you could like walk from the trunk of one fallen tree, step on the trunk of the next fallen tree, and make your way all the way down this hillside before you had to actually leave a track in the snow, which tells you again about how tactical and sneaky they are. This is in an area where there's no human presence, no human trails, no snowmobile trails anywhere around there. Nobody ever would have noticed this if they hadn't come through making this new trail and back-trailed them. And it was still doing that.
Wow. So did that trail ever get completed, by the way?
Oh yeah. They blazed a trail through there, and a lot of this stuff in northern Minnesota, it's across swamps and stuff, so it's only usable during the winter.
Sure. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's the break. We'll be back for the second hour of our show in just a couple minutes. Don't go away. As you can tell, the conversation is nothing short of amazing.
Play their games. Everybody loves to place their bets. They don't understand the price I paid. They don't care to comprehend. Trace their lines upon my body, dripping scars across my heart. Raging anger pours inside me as their lies keep falling apart. Taking off the slice of my sanity, just make sure that you're
Carol Ann is not like those she's with. They're attracted to the one thing about her that is different from themselves. Her life force. It is very strong. It gives off its own illumination. It is a light that implies life and memory of love and home and earthly pleasures. Something they desperately desire, but can't have anymore. Right now, she's the closest thing to that.
Poltergeists are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the second hour of our show. We are joined tonight, of course, by our good friend, Mr. Duke Sullivan from World Bigfoot Radio, who is joining us to discuss cryptids and so much more. And it's already been so much more, but it's been amazing. Duke, how do you feel about phone calls? You good with that?
Sure.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to call in, you got a question for the Duke yourself, please feel free to call in. The call lines are open. It's 213-233-3998. Again, 213-233-3998. If you got a question you'd like to ask Duke yourself, he, of course, is amenable to the idea, which is awesome. So if you've got a question, a burning question about a Bigfoot or another cryptid that you're curious about, 213-233-3998. So we'll just leave them open, and if someone calls in, we'll get to that. Now, Duke, what is the largest, other than the mountain giants, what would be the largest type of Bigfoot that are out there, or dogmen, or what is the largest one you've heard of?
Mountain giants are it until you get up the scale further to the regular giants and Nephilim type things.
Oh, okay.
Smaller than that. Well, I got a guest that's coming on here shortly who's been doing a bunch of looking into this up in central Canada, where he's actually he caught one on film by accident. And because it was right next to a tree standing out in the open, he could go back and scale it. And if you look at the scaling job that he did with it standing next to the tree, it looks like it's between 15 and 17 feet tall.
Oh, my God.
But it's not shaped like a mountain giant. It's shaped like the Hulk. In other words, like a regular Bigfoot. Cone had the whole thing. So he got curious and started wondering if there was, like the, use a human example, the Zulus in Africa, where there was one tribe where they were exceptionally tall because they had tall members and they, small tribe. So it tended to be bigger. Well, he's sort of wondering if the same thing is going on up there. So he started taking a look around. And, yeah, there's actually a bunch of reports of these outsized, big, ginormous things that seem to be Bigfoot. They don't have any of the mountain giant characteristics to them that are up in this area. So he's going to be coming on doing a show about that shortly. So the answer is, yeah, we don't know. We're looking into it.
Wow. I've heard some reports over the years talking about a Bigfoot being in the range of 15 feet. And I found that so and absolutely mind-boggling, because you're already looking at something that generally is 8 to 10 feet tall, which is plenty big enough. But when you when you add another 5 feet onto that, that's essentially another gorilla standing on top of its shoulders, and max out the whole scale of it to match that new size. I mean, that's nothing short of a nightmare.
And that's why you tend to only get reports of these things in areas that are like really out in the middle of nowhere, where you got, 100 miles of woods in every direction, because they need a range that big in order to feed themselves. So you're just not going to see ginormous things like that in areas that are, surrounded by cities or something. It's just not enough land for them to feed themselves. So that's kind of a good thing. If, you have to have Bigfoot near you, if you're near a city or something, it's regular old Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be too worried about it.
Well,
They're curious. They want your veggie garden. They want to raid your dumpster. That's pretty much it. They might slap your house to see if you yell and scream, and that would be fun. But other than that, that's about it. Some of these other things, yeah, they tend to be further out in the middle of nowhere. Just natural science. They need a bigger range. You need more food, so you don't tend to find the really gigantic ones near civilization. Which again is why they get spotted less frequently. Because who is out in the middle of nowhere looking for these things? Not even the Bigfoot researchers.
right.
They don't need to be out in the middle of nowhere. The ones that know what they're doing go, well, this is a likely spot. It's within driving distance. I only have to walk in 2 miles. Da-da-da-da-da. Here's evidence, tree structures, tracks. Let's stake out this area for a while. They're not walking 50 miles from the nearest road looking for frickin' Bigfoot. And then the people that are that far out in the middle of nowhere that tend to be the ones that see these things are not Bigfoot researchers. They're hunters or something. And let's face it, if you're a hunter and you see an 8-foot Bigfoot, okay, I saw Finding Bigfoot on TV. Maybe I'll tell my closest friend who maybe won't laugh at me too much. But you see something 15-foot tall go walking past you out there, you're not telling anybody.
Right.
Let's get realistic about this.
Right. No, I agree. It's just, and well, I mean, that is the good part, though. At least some people can have the discussion now without fear of, absolute ridicule, which used to be the case. So I guess a lot of our pop culture and a lot of people working really hard, like yourselves and many others, have created the ability to have the narrative, which I think is awesome. But I got to ask you, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit in your last statement, but do you believe that these beings are in and around our civilization? Are they taking advantage of the low-hanging fruit of our wastefulness?
Absolutely. No
Okay.
question about it. I've had researcher after researcher after researcher finding evidence of them right next to the suburbs.
Wow.
And some guys that just jumped on this bandwagon recently to the contrary. This has been pretty well known amongst researchers for at least 10 years. One of my favorite areas to go, as any guys that follow my channel know, I got a whole series of Patty Canyon videos, and it's not named after Patty. That's literally the name of it, Pattee. And it's just a little river that flows down from Mount Sentinel right into Missoula. And there's houses like halfway up it. And if you get up toward the top of it, then it's a nature preserve. It has been for 80 years. No hunting, no nothing. Okay? Why would they be there? Oh, it happens to border the 2.2 million acres of Bololo National Forest.
Okay.
And this little hiking area park itself is like 35,000 acres or something. Okay? And so I go, that's like literally 3 miles from the house that I'm sitting in Missoula right now to my research area.
Wow.
And we're in the second biggest town in Montana, 75, 80,000 population. It's the second biggest behind the capital.
Wow.
And I just had somebody the other day here right in town that another good example, went to a gas station, had my Sasquatch Chronicles beanie cap on because it was cold and blizzardy and yucky.
Sure.
And he looked at the beanie and he went, "Oh, I've seen a Bigfoot." And I'm like, "Really? You should tell me about this." For some reason. And his story, and I'm hoping to get him on the show soon, is that he was walking from Missoula to East Missoula. And for those that don't know the local area, that's about like a mile. And it's just a little slot canyon. It's got a local access road, a train track, and the freeway going through it. And that's pretty much it. And that's all the room there is for it, plus the river. So he's walking, it's, what did he say, December 12th, about 4:15, something like that. They're walking along, and he realizes there's this object up on the side of Mount Jumbo that's sort of paralleling them. Well, there's lots of hiking trails and stuff, and people are up there biking and walking during the summer, so you know how big they look, and this thing looked way too big. Plus, it was black. So he got his girlfriend to start snapping pictures, which he has 12, and they're all time-stamped, that shows this thing moving across this entire hillside. He showed me the pictures. The very first one, I went, I know exactly where that is. I've seen that like 100 freaking times. I know exactly where that is. So we can not only go up there and scale up this, by getting pictures from the same spot down below and having a human standing in the same spot, because he walked right past this one. There's only like one huge tree up there. The whole hillside is denuded. He walked past the tree. Oh, goody. So we can figure out exactly how tall he was. And then the secondary image, I think, is like 8 shots in, where he gets closer to the base of the hill, and you can see a power pole in the foreground running along the train tracks for scale. which, as I understand, are about 32 feet. And he's still well behind it on the mountainside, and he looks to be about a third of the height of the power pole. So we can not only figure out pretty close to how big he was, but we can, since we have the timestamps on all these pictures, we can follow them along the hillside, have a human follow that circuit, and see if they can do it in the amount of time that this object did it. And my guess is going to be no way.
Right.
And it's clear in these pictures, even though he's about a quarter mile away, whatever this was is bipedal, and it wasn't running.
Wow. That is amazing. Now
and that's literally right in Missoula. I mean, you're walking from Missoula to East Missoula, and there's somebody taking pictures and watching a Bigfoot. One of the better known sightings here in town was from somebody who wasn't even from here. It was a lady from Connecticut with her daughter, and they were on Waterworks Hill, which again is right in Missoula. The hillside is in Missoula. They were walking up that hillside in the morning to have a little, hike in the morning as the sun was coming up, yada, yada, yada. And again, this is one of most of these local mountainsides and stuff, they cut all the trees off on purpose. Mm-hmm. So when fire season happens, the fires don't burn right into town and burn the town down. Mm-hmm. So they're denuded. There isn't any place for Bigfoot to hide. So they're walking up this hillside. It's all grass with like half a dozen little trees up toward the top of it. And as they get about halfway up the side of Waterworks Hill, they notice that one of the trees stands up and runs away over the top of the mountain. At which point they turned around and ran back to town and filed a report right away and went, I don't know what that was, but one of your trees got up and ran away.
Oh my God. That is amazing. Now, you don't suppose they're actually taking residence in and around our urban areas? Are they traveling in and out? And so they would retreat to the forest for their daytimes or nighttimes or whenever they're actually sleeping, but they would travel in and take advantage of these easy pickings.
Yeah, you can pretty much bet if they're doing anything around towns, it's going to be strictly nocturnal because they know we're around during the day and will spot them, so they'll be doing all their prowling at night. But, their capacity for movement across rough terrain that you noted earlier and the ridiculous speed that they could do it at means that for them, like a 5-mile hike is like a 10-minute walk to us. So it's like nothing.
Sure. So they could cover that ground in no time, get what they need, and return to the safety of the forest. Wow.
Yeah. And, you got people that are in areas where they know that they're like, at certain times of the day they'll be around or something if you happen to be there, and they'll sit there and watch your camp most of the night. You got to think about that and go, they're so good at getting food and they can do it so fast, they can waste most of the night just sitting there watching you around the campfire and throwing acorns at you.
Yeah, well, there's so many reports of that too. It's just like that must be almost the counting coup thing, right? Where they're just let's see if I can hit them or how close I can get.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of it's just they're messing with you, or they're trying to see if they're going to get a reaction, if you're paying attention. Mm-hmm. They're gauging what your reaction is going to be. When they start actually hitting you with them, it's like they're definitely trying to get your attention at that point.
Now, would you say that's an intimidation technique to get you gone, or is that just them being bored?
Yeah, I think it's just them being bored mostly. In instances where it seems like they want the people to leave, they'll ramp it up a lot more. They'll start throwing in rocks that are going to go thud when they hit the ground near you, or they'll start breaking heavy timber nearby, or you'll hear like growls or vocalizations, and then time to go. Bushes and trees shaking, time to leave.
That's amazing. Oh, and it's so cool that they're so versatile, and I've made this mention many times during the show, and it's certainly not my fact, but it's one that I've picked up along the way. But the only state in the nation that hasn't had some sort of Bigfoot sighting is Hawaii. That they have been sighted everywhere else, which shows their versatility. They're reported in desert areas, like I've heard them reported in Mexico. Are you familiar with those reports?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've heard reports coming out of northern Mexico and stuff, and all of those desert states down there on the border, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada. They've all got Bigfoot reports. Lots of them.
Wow.
Which you'd think, there's no way Bigfoot can live in the desert. Go check out Yucca Man. Yucca Man is named because he lives in the area where it's desert and the yucca plants are. That's where he's been spotted. They're all over the place down there. I know several really good researchers down in the Southwest They're probably some of the best researchers on the continent, and they don't have any problem finding Bigfoot evidence.
Mm-hmm. And around the globe as well. I mean, like the Yowie in Australia, the Yeren
Yep.
in China, and of course the USSR, former USSR, the Alma, and they have like a couple different kinds, don't they? Aren't they supposed to also have relic hominids like perhaps Neanderthals up in
Oh, yeah.
Russia?
Well, that whole area, you got to keep in mind, that's like, what, 12 time zones or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
So lots of different cultures and languages. So and they all have their own local language and name for it. The Almas and the Almasti are sort of like Caucasus regions. If you go further south into the Himalayas, then it's a Yeti. You get down into China, it's a Yeren. Right around Russia, it's called the Mank. And then there's other local names if you go further afield from there.
Man, yeah, and even into Europe and such. Now, the one that surprised me was that the UK is still having reports and groups that are actively looking for these. I think they call them the wild man up there, but I'm not sure if they have other names for them. But it seems to me, as old as those areas are, if there were things like that, I would have thought they would have been long chased out just by the spread of civilization and such. But apparently they're still there.
Oh, there's tremendous deforestation over there in that little island kingdom, too. Don't forget about that. And they sort of need to have some cover at some point in order to hide. Maybe they're troglodytes over there and they just stay underground 90% of the time, only come up in the middle of the night, get food, go hide again. They could still survive that way. There are still reports over there. They do still occasionally find a track or somebody sees something weird. The documentation isn't that great,
Right.
but there is some.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some long-term stuff going on in areas outside of England. Like Wales actually has forests.
Okay.
There could still be some living there for sure. Northern Scotland, there's an original forest still there. Most people don't know that. The Grey Man of Ben Macadui there in Scotland has been reported for decades. Hunters up in the high mountains having some giant gray furry thing following them around, scaring the hell out of them until they left the area again.
That brings up a great point, and this is something that I found really interesting, is the belief that, a lot of people would believe that when hunters go out for hunting season and stuff, it would be a deterrent, and perhaps these things move further into the scrub and away and stuff. But I've heard that it's quite the contrary, that they're actually drawn in by that and are commonly believed to steal kills.
I think it really depends on what area you're in. If you're over in the East Coast or the forests are sort of limited and there's a swarm of hunters in there, they're just going to hide somewhere and kind of wait it out.
Okay.
If you're out here in the Pac West, it's a lot different proposition because hunters are a lot fewer and farther in between. There aren't big packs of them. If you're following one around, you're not liable to stumble into some other hunting party in the same area, if you get my drift.
Right.
So for them, actually, the local wildlife has already been habituated to that. There's problems with both grizzlies and mountain lions following hunters now. And they do single them out based on what they're carrying. They follow the guys with the long rifles. If you got a pistol or something, they're not interested. But if they see you carrying a long rifle, they'll follow you because you got a long rifle, you're hunting something. And chances are pretty good if you shoot something, it's going to be a long ways away. And they're faster than we are. And they can get to the kill before you can. And then they get yummy free meal. And worst case scenario, you get to the kill first, you got it, start hauling the meat away, and there's a yummy gut pile that they get to eat.
Oh,
And there's no reason to assume that Sasquatch wouldn't be easily as smart or smarter and just be going like, oh, he's going to shoot that elk a quarter mile away. Let's see if he hits it. Oh, yeah, you got it. I could be down there and have that thing in 4 minutes. He'll never even get near it.
Right, exactly. And the reason that I brought that up was, of course, in I have family members that aren't into this subject at all, and they think it's kind of ridiculous, and that's fine. Everybody has their paradigm and everybody has their beliefs. But my one brother was telling me a story when he was bow hunting. He hit this buck really well, and there was just a hell of a blood trail, and they followed it for a few hundred yards, and they said, this thing has to have bled out pretty soon. And they get to the blood trail, and there's absolutely nothing. There's no sign of anything had been there other than the blood trail ended. And it just occurred to me, I wonder if one of them got, grabbed a quick meal and took off, because it didn't stand to reason that it hadn't dropped right there at the end of the blood trail with as much blood as it had lost. It didn't just get a second wind.
Right, and I've heard that a lot of times, and not, even related to Bigfoot incidents, just these baffling, where did my kill go?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing to me is a lot of these guys are such experienced hunters that they were looking around going, well, if a big predator grabbed it and drug it away, where's the drag marks? Why didn't it break any of this brush?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's got the thing in its mouth hauling it away, right? How tall does even a big bear stand? If it's got a full-size deer in its mouth, the deer is dragging.
Right. Right.
The bear's going to be leaving a trail too. Why is there no trail?
Yeah, exactly. It's got to be being carried. That's amazing. Absolutely.
And what's even scarier is when like they lose a whole elk, like a bull elk or something, and it's like gone. No trail, no nothing. You're like, okay, what can pick up a bull elk, throw it over its shoulder, and walk off with it? I'm going the other way now.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I will say that one time when Robin was on the show, she had mentioned a story of a hunter that was he was elk hunting, and I believe I'll probably butcher this in the retelling of it, but he was looking through his scope and saw this elk that looked like it was laying down, but it was moving across the end up a hill, and he was like just baffled, like what's going on, and he kept watching, and they hit a little clearing, and she said that the person reported seeing all these little people dragging this huge elk, and I was like, wow, that is amazing, So I guess that, but even then again, there would be marks from that kind of traffic.
Yeah, exactly. You would see, so again, you would know the little people moved it because there's still marks that something was dragging something. Even if you couldn't find their track, something dragged it. Oh, it probably was just a normal animal. I might give up on that one.
Right.
I heard another report from a long time ago, maybe pre-white man era, excuse me, where an Indian brave had shot an elk, was trailing it, and saw it from across a draw on the other side over there. It was sort of laying down in a little clearing area on its side, and again it was moving on its side, and he couldn't figure out what was going on. And then he got closer to it, he could see over the timber and everything that there was just one little person that had its neck over its shoulder and was dragging this whole elk off by itself.
Oh my God. Wow.
And that's part of where these guys have super strength thing comes from.
Right.
And no, a 2-foot tall guy should not be able to drag a, 1,200-pound elk or something. So there's supernatural something going on there for sure.
Right. And of course, we all have heard the stories of like chimpanzees, and they look pretty tiny, but an adult male chimpanzee is many times stronger than a strong adult male person. Like this, their pound of force per square inch is so much beyond ours.
Yeah, they're just tremendously powerful. I think it's like your average chimp is like 5 times stronger than one of your strongest humans or something like that, and then scale it up even more for gorillas.
Yeah, and then you scale it up more for like things like the Bigfoot and Gugwe and all that, and it's just like,
and you scale it up even more for mountain giants and tip campers over.
Yeah. Now I got to ask you. We're about 2 minutes out of break, but I do want to spend a little time getting into the rake, because this is a topic that really creeps me out. I've seen a few videos, and most of them look pretty hokey, but there's a couple out there that really kind of freak me out, and I want to hear your thoughts on the rake and whether I know a lot of people believe it's just fabrications of recreational minds, or perhaps some weird legends or whatever, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And then I do want to touch on some things we were talking about before the show, because I find that is absolutely amazing and interesting, and it's not necessarily cryptid related, but it's definitely in line with the show, so I'd love to touch on that if you don't mind.
Yeah, actually, it is sort of cryptid related if you count alien life on Mars as cryptids.
Well, there's the teaser, ladies and gentlemen. But I just think that you're in this audience. I think a lot of people are pretty much like, yeah, NASA is never a straight answer, and we're being spoon-fed a narrative. There's a lot more going on out there than we know and are led to know or able to know, except for, of course, a lot of researchers and insiders that have decided to break the silence and bring information out for the rest of us. But I think that is absolutely amazing, and I can't wait for you to share that with our audience, because that is just phenomenal.
Right on, man. I'm looking forward to it too. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to our last break in the night, and again, if you do want to call in, it's 213-233-3998. Now I didn't advertise the show as a call-in show, but I just wanted to leave that option open to you guys. If any of you did have a question you wanted to ask, now's the time. But the time is absolutely flying as usual here on the portal. But we'll be right back in just a couple minutes for the last half hour of the show, and we'll get into the Rake and so much more. So don't go away, everybody. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the last half hour of the Paranormal Portal tonight. We are joined by Mr. Duke Sullivan of World Bigfoot Radio, and he's here talking about all things cryptid. We do have a phone call here, Duke. You ready to take a call?
Sure.
All right, and this is area code 858. You're on the air.
Oh, hey, Duke and Brad.
Hey.
Hey.
Okay, do you know anything about the missing 411?
I've not read his books. I've watched a lot of the shows and stuff that he's done. Seems like he's doing pretty thorough research on a lot of it. I noticed there's a question in chat about if I think that people that are disappearing and never being seen again could be the result of Bigfoot. And the answer is yes. Could be other cryptids doing it too.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, that was the one I was asking.
Oh, that was you. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is Lewis, of course. Sure. All right, brother. Well, thank you for your call. Appreciate hearing from you.
You too.
All right. Good night. All right. Well, now
let's get back to your question, Brett.
Yes, sir.
Before the break.
First of all, I want to know what you think about the Rake.
The Rake. I'm going to lump a bunch of these things together here.
Sure.
First of all, what is the Rake? Well, the Rake is a modern urban legend. It's a modern urban name. Mm-hmm. How did it come about? Well, think about it for a minute. Somebody encounters something, they don't know what it is. They see it, they experience it, sometimes they even film it. What is that thing? I don't know. They don't know anything about cryptids. They haven't got 10 years to research it. They make up a name and a legend and put out a video. Here's this thing. It's the Rake. Okay? If you go and actually look at the description or videos of some of these things and know about cryptids, you might be inclined to go, well, there's actually other cryptids that this could be that you don't need to give it a new name.
Okay.
Like, for instance, the ghoul, G-H-U-L, as they say it over in the Middle East, is a very common cryptid over in the Middle East. Anytime you're out in the wastes, you have to worry about ghouls being around. Packs of ghouls will attack you. They eat humans. They look like gangly, skinny, emaciated humans that'll eat other humans, essentially. Oh. Usually pale white because they only come out in the dark. They eat corpses. They'll dig in like underneath graveyards and make tunnels into newly interred corpses, break through the bottom of the coffin, extract the corpse, eat it. This sort of stuff is very common through medieval legend and over in the Middle East. And then, again, the Rake could be the same thing because matches the description, same kind of behavior. So it could just be, like they made a new name up for a ghoul. As far as another possibility for some of these really tall, skinny, white-looking, definitely not Bigfoot-looking things, the Indians on the West Coast have the legend of the Stick Indians. The Stick Indians were supposedly a tribe of regular Indians. There was a really bad winter. They didn't have enough food stored up, and the other tribes could barely make it themselves, so they weren't going to supply them with extra food. And this other tribe basically was left to starve. So rather than starving, they became cannibals and started raiding the tribes and actually stealing members of these tribes and eating them. And so that's the legend behind the Stick Indian. So again, description sort of along the same lines. Nocturnal, pale colored because they don't get out in the sun. Tall, skinny, gangly, like to capture and eat humans. And then you take the same sort of thing and extrapolate a little bit further, and you've almost got the same description of the Wendigo up in Canada, where they're talking about it being, Wendigo psychosis, like to eat other people, skinny, fat looking, like emaciated, gangly, but pot belly, same sort of description. So like a lot of these things are just recycled with new names. And then as far as like Slender Man goes, I think that's just misidentifications of James Comey. Other than that, I have no idea what that would
be. Fair enough. Oh, man. All right. Okay. Now, we also gave a teaser about some other stuff that you were going to bring up, and I'll just let you run with this because this is just amazing to me, and I'm blown away. And
I'm blown away, too, because I thought I'd never get a chance to actually talk about this because there wouldn't be anybody that could actually back me up on it, and now there is. For all of you guys that are into like UFO stuff, I'm sure you're aware of a person named Linda Moulton Howe. In February 22, they turned out a video called Was there life on Mars? Beyond a shadow of a doubt. Go check it out on YouTube. At the 11-minute mark is where you want to really look at. And Linda starts talking about being invited by someone who had been a government insider to come out to Boston and meet them. His name is Mark Carlotto, and he was analytical sciences guy for the Department of Defense. And what his job was looking at and analyzing pictures that they were taking from the surface of Mars with their rovers, their orbiter missions that they were taking orbital pictures of it. And he showed her a picture that he had of one of these pictures they had taken of the face on Mars, which absolutely proved it was not a trick of light and shadow. It was a sculpture. It's a mile long. It looks like a face. She got to see one of these pictures. Okay, now let's go back a lot. Face on Mars, where did that image come from? Viking 2 orbiter mission, launch date 9 September 1975. And it was successfully put into orbit, made 700 orbits of the planet before it failed to continue to work, or Martians blew it up, whatever. It was really low resolution. We're talking mid-1970s technology. Mm-hmm. So it was taking pictures of vast areas at what we would consider nowadays to be pitiful resolution. And you could blow it up a lot and you could get detail out of it, which is how they find the Cydonia complex with all the weird pyramids and stuff, and then this giant face staring up from the surface of Mars, apparently about a mile long. Well, the images, even the ones I sent you, there's 2 comparison shots that were taken by the Viking orbiter mission. Mm-hmm. And this thing was not like shifting positions in orbit that much where you could have gotten a variance on it. In other words, each time it would make a pass, it would be making a pass, it would be mapping another big area, not a small little bitty area from a different angle. So they, on the next pass, they wouldn't have even, they wouldn't have got the face at all if they were mapping a different area. Mm-hmm. So perforce, when they were going over that area, mapping that area or taking subsequent shots, it was from the same spot. And the one shot that it shows and the other shot that it shows, supposedly from the same angle and the same position in orbit, the mouth looks different. So this giant stone thing isn't moving around and changing shape. Why does the mouth look different? So somebody's already altering the images of this back in the 1970s. Then you have a whole pile of failed missions, mostly from the Soviets going to Mars, and a few of our own. And then we get up to the early 1990s with the Mars Observer, which, interestingly enough, according to the record, says was launched on 25 September 1992. But I found another video that claimed it was launched on 25th August 1992. So problems with the records are right there. Okay, this thing did not actually function properly, supposedly. It like crashed or didn't work or whatever. They never got any feedback from it, which is BS. I was working at the post office, the bulk mail center in Eagan in the early 1990s, and I just happened to one day be working in their high security area of REWRAP, which is like a little enclosure, and I should set the stage. This building is gigantic. It's 3 stories high, 111 18-wheeler loading bays, mechanized conveyor belts all over the place, enormous. They have one little area that's this enclosed cage right in the middle of it on the concrete, and you have to have security to get in there, and you get locked in when you're in there. And what you do is you take all the package mail that's been broken open, and you make sure that whatever was supposed to be in the package is still there. If it's damaged, you include a note, say, hey, sorry, we did our best, some monkey stamped on it, whatever. And then you repackage it and ship it on its way. Hopefully you can figure out from the package surface where it was supposed to go and get it to go there. Anyway, that's the mission. So there's 2 of us in there. I'm over on the right side, and I'm looking through the pile that I've got, which is like mostly busted open boxes with CDs in them. Yeah, it was that time period. And tons of those things. And then there's this one thing that's like brown paper wrapper. It's still got the address on it. Side got torn open. Top of it got scuffed a little bit. Had to open it. You have to open it up to make sure how damaged it is and if there's anything missing. So I had to pull it out of the package, and it was like a magazine size thing that had a brown, kind of nondescript wrapping on it. It said from Houston, NASA, and it was going to Washington, D.C. So I paged through it to make sure there wasn't all scuffed up or ripped up pages or anything. And every page in here was a picture of the face on Mars in high detail, high resolution, from different angles, different positions. There's absolutely no mistaking it. It wasn't taken just from one side. This is taken from all sides, from the top angle, from the bottom angle. It has eyes. It has eyeballs. It has irises. It has teeth. It has eyebrows.
Wow.
No way in hell is this thing natural. Absolutely, positively, 100% fact. There's a face on Mars. The subsequent image that they released, the doctored one that they turned out in '89, it looks like a rock pile. Yeah, they're full of it. And then the one that they turned out in like 2000 something, they turned out another follow-up one and went, oh, here's an even better picture of it. And the previous one and that one don't even match up. Come on, get your lies straight, never a straight answer. Give me a friggin' break. So here's Linda Moulton Howe that had somebody show her one of these pictures, and here's me that saw the whole package of them going through there that broke open. Wow. And, I'm not allowed to, take pictures, and I couldn't walk out and photocopy it or anything. But on the other hand, I wasn't sworn to secrecy. I was just a casual worker at the post office. Mm-hmm. So now that somebody else has actually seen one of these things, I think it might be time for me to actually mention that, yeah, she's not BSing, and this guy that showed her the picture isn't hoaxing her.
Right. Yeah, and there's been a long tradition at NASA of doctoring photos to remove things that they don't want the public to see. Many people have gone through their imaging and can see the digital footprint of a lot of image modification going on. So this is not a new trick for them. It's been going on forever.
No, and there's channels out there that are scooping up all those images and have people going through them with a fine-tooth comb and finding stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like, some of this could be pareidolia, tricks of light and shadow and whatnot, but other things are just like, there's no way that's natural. No way is that natural,
Right.
No question. It's something constructed or some old ruin or something. And then, of course, if you accept that the face on Mars is genuine, something made it. Mm-hmm. Who made it?
Right.
It looks kind of like a human, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Was there humans on Mars at one point, or was there another species that looked like humans? And then the big question is, why aren't they there now? Why does everything on Mars look like a wreck?
Right.
Why, if we're accepting that any of the images we're getting from NASA are valid, right. Why does Mars look like a sandbox and there's no life on it? Well, let me give you another guy to go check out. I think he's also done shows with Linda Moulton Howe. His name is John Brandenburg, and he is a PhD nuclear physicist.
Okay.
And I believe one of the shows he's done is called Death on Mars. I've seen at least one of the shows that he's done. And this guy is going by the orbital data that we've got from the satellites that don't just take pictures, but can take pictures of the composition. Like they can tell by the colors at certain spectrum, frequencies, what kind of mineral, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And then we've had actual landers and rovers, not just from us, but from other countries, all over the surface of Mars, taking samples and sending it back to us so that we have a good idea what's in the soil in this area and whatnot. Mm-hmm. This guy has actually identified several radioactive isotopes that absolutely cannot be on Mars unless there were thermonuclear detonations there. And he's found the craters.
Oh, my
huge
God.
ones.
Oh. So it was a nuclear holocaust there, most likely.
Yep. Yep. Either it was a battle between two planets or the Martians just wiped themselves out, whatever, we don't know. But formerly life there, yeah. Nuclear war there seems to be pretty conclusive. Go watch what he's got to say. It's hard to refute hard science.
Right. Wow, that is so epic. And of course, a lot of us, if any of you have spent any of the time at all looking at some of these rover shots and some of the controversy around them, there's a lot of pictures that are really questionable that seem to show shrapnel from what would be considered technology. They don't look like normal geological formations of rock. They look like what could be left of structures or even mechanical objects. There seems to be some intricacy that doesn't lend itself to a natural origin, as far as I can tell.
Exactly, and I think that's part of the reason why they had this failed mission that didn't actually map Mars, because it really did map Mars in high detail, so they could see where were the areas to avoid with the landing craft. So you can put a landing craft on the surface, do basic science, get information, and not be close enough for any of the cameras to pick up any of these big structures that are still lying around there. And a lot of people have called them out on that. Why didn't you land a probe over by Cydonia? Oh, that's not interesting. We want to be out in this sand dune area over here. Yeah, we're buying that one, sure.
Now, have you also seen those images that seem to show these little anomalies that appear to be flying by the rovers? They look like they could be little light orbs, or they look like they might be insects or something. To me, those are really bizarre too. And then there's so many of them. Like there's the pictures that look like there's a statue head laying there, and
Yep.
But
The crab on Mars, that's another weird looking thing.
right. And I don't know what now. Do you think that the whole place is still radioactive to a dangerous degree?
Well, apparently, yeah. I mean, there's other things that are the soil is really, really bad for like any. You would virtually have to like rebuild the soil in order to grow anything there. We know that. So it's like it's lifeless.
Yeah.
You'd have to be underground. Maybe there's still water underground. Maybe there's still life. Like we have mushrooms that grow in caves and stuff. Maybe there's still life underground and stuff. But as far as the surface, it doesn't look very promising. And part of the reason for that, like I said, there's these radioactive isotopes that do not occur in nature. They are only found around nuclear blast sites. And there's large quantities of them in the soil on Mars, and concentrated around where these conspicuously gigantic craters you can see from orbit are.
Yeah, I don't know, and it seems to me it's you're right. Why don't they land by what look like those structures and try to figure out what the hell's going on? But again, what would be the end game for them trying to cover this up, though? I mean, what is your take on why would they want to suppress this information? What is it about the ramifications of these things that threaten the status quo so much?
Well, same thing as Bigfoot. It's going to change everything about science and everything about the way we view the world. And they don't want to rewrite the science books and eat a lot of crow and admit they're completely frickin' wrong and they've been lying for years.
You're so poetic. I love it. No,
Sorry, there's. Just let me make this clear. I'm not down on all scientists. Some scientists are great.
Oh, absolutely.
I love Jeff Meldrum. I absolutely adore Igor Burtsev. Those are the Bigfoot guys that are out there. John Meinzinski, right on, man. Grover Krantz and John Bindernagel, that are both sadly deceased now. Actual scientists, open-minded, out in the field, doing research, looking into it. Those guys are great. What I can't stand are the academic cretins that live in this cloistered environment in some university their entire life. All they've ever seen is the inside of a concrete canyon. They couldn't find their butt with both hands, and they presume to tell people that are out in the field researching this stuff that we don't know what we're looking at. Give me a break.
Right. Yeah, and it is tragic because you would think that the whole scope and breadth of it would be to increase understanding, but there definitely seems to be an agenda involved in this that wants to decrease any exploration and discovery because, I don't know, they just seem to like to be able to control that narrative, but we see that in so many power structures that I guess it makes sense.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, let's consider another nearby celestial body, Venus. Just as close as Mars is. Why aren't we sending probes there?
Yeah, great question. I don't know. Isn't that atmosphere supposed to be acidic or something like that though?
Who says that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, exactly.
NASA.
Very good point. Very good point. Now, I do, we've covered it on the show, the stories of like Val L. Thor, the gentleman that was supposedly a Venusian working for the government and with the government for a number of years. I don't know how far down this rabbit hole you go, but it seems to me there's stories of people from Venus having been here. So I wonder about that.
Actually, if you know who Phil Schneider is, I know somebody
sure.
that knew Phil Schneider and met him. And they have a bunch of insider info too. And they claim that, yes, we have bases on Mars and the Moon and Venus.
Well, an old a host of TFR, his name was William Whitecrow, and he was a Native American shaman, but he was in the military for a number of years, and he swears that he was one of the people on Mars. sent there to do all those military things that are going on over there. And I always found him to be of impeccable character and not the type of person to, subscribe to flights of fancy. He was well grounded, just the most amazing guy. For as little as I knew him, I was nothing but impressed by him. So I don't see why he would fabricate that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that I have to consider with some of these sources. Some of these people, I've known them for years before they'll come forward and tell me some of this really deep, dark information they don't want to share. And by then, I pretty much vetted everything that they've said as accurate. Mm-hmm. So why would they just, make up this one weird story?
Right. Yeah.
When everything else they told me that's, incredibly weird in and of itself can actually be pretty much validated as factual. Why would they make up this one weird story out of, thin air?
Right, exactly. And it certainly doesn't, people coming forward with stories like this don't put themselves in enviable positions because they basically are, it's like rubbing yourself in pork chops and going into a dog kennel. I mean, you're going to get mauled by people that just want to defame everything about you for saying such things. And some of them are people that just are stuck in their paradigm and don't want anything to threaten that. But others, I would think, are trying to control the narrative, as we mentioned before. And to have this information out there may threaten, their power base or whatever.
Yeah, paid trolls. In fact, you guys out there as audience members and listeners and stuff can pay attention to this. Whoever's getting attacked a lot, it could be that the reason they're getting attacked is because they're like the bomber pilot that's right over the Fuhrer bunker about to unload. Mm-hmm. And so he starts firing up all the flak he can to stop that bomber before it unloads.
Yeah, good point.
In other words, if there's smoke, there's fire.
Right. Yeah, there's some kind of agenda at work that they wanna discredit. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that like to jump on those bandwagons too. So, but.
Yeah, we call them the Jerry Springer audience crowd.
Jerry. Yeah, that was like WWE with some talk.
Pretty much, although the fight sequences weren't nearly as well choreographed.
That's true. They weren't, but they were funny. Duke, we're about at the 3-minute mark. Again, can you let people know how to keep in touch with what you're doing?
Sure. Website's just almost done here. Keep your fingers crossed. Hopefully we'll have that completed soon. For right now, check it out on my channel, Brian Sullivan. It's easier to find just by typing in World Bigfoot Radio on YouTube, and all my 120 or so shows will pop up. So you got plenty to choose from. If you haven't seen or heard of them before, you're going to be busy for a while. And also, I'm on MeWe, my main support group is World Bigfoot Central on MeWe. Come on over, join MeWe. It's awesome. It's like Facebook without the fascism. And, I have other platforms that I'm not really active on right now. I am probably going to be setting up on BitChute shortly, which I recommend to video content creators. Sound quality and video quality are better, actually. Mm-hmm. And it's you can monetize and everything there, too. So if you're worried about getting purged from YouTube, like they're trying to purge everybody right now, go to BitChute, BitChute.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you have a Patreon as well or no?
I have a PayPal. It's paypal.me World Bigfoot Central. And I am not monetized. They demonetized my whole channel 6 months ago, which didn't stop me from putting out shows to irritate them with. So if you appreciate somebody putting out shows that irritates them, feel free to donate to the cause to keep me making these shows, because really I could use the help. I'm not a rich guy, and this is all out of pocket. So paypal.me /World Bigfoot Central.
All right, everybody. And thank you all for being here and being a part of the show. As always, it's a great pleasure to have so many of you show up and to be participating in the chat rooms. I'm absolutely humbled every show I do that so many of you are interested in what I'm doing. But, definitely if you're not already following us on Facebook, you can do that. We are also on MeWe. You can just go look for Brent Thomas on MeWe, and I'm there as well. I'm trying to put my footprint there, and we have a BitChute as well, too. But I just thank you all for being a part of this. Stay tuned, everybody, for Nikki Colombo is coming up next year on TFR, iHeart, Tune In, and TalkStream Live. And Nikki deals with a lot of the UFO phenomenon, and she is a contactee as well. And so it's always a great fun. And if you haven't ever listened to her show, she's just got this amazing vibrance and light, and she has this infectious laughter. Every time she laughs, I start laughing myself, and it's just, she's one of those people. So definitely check out her show and try to support her as well, because she's working hard. She's from down under. She's in Aussie land, so she'll be coming up right following us here on TFR Live. And everybody, I'll be back tomorrow night with Don, and we'll get up to some more paranormal mayhem here on the show. So be good, be kind, be nice, take care of each other, and find the magic in every day. And we will see you tomorrow night here on the Paranormal Portal. Love y'all.
Don't hug the Wookiee.
Don't hug the Wookiee. Good night, everybody.